Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Prologue. In many cultures, the color of death and evil is considered white. Having been to the far north, it's easy to see why. The polar night steals the sun. The icy wilderness stretches out in all directions in the wrong light of the moon and the polar lights. The frost burns, the blizzard howls like a horde of ghosts. And there are no colors but white on the frozen, snow-covered ground. The snow is white even in the dark. Invisible inhabitants of Yakutsk. The north is stunning, not for its beauty or opulence, but for its grandeur. The taiga and tundra are like an ocean. Tibet and the Norwegian fjords can be hidden here, and no one will find it. And yet even in crowded England, where even in the Middle Ages there were 20 inhabitants per square kilometer, there was room for a people of hills and bizarre forest creatures. What then can we say about Yakutsk, where the population density even today is 100 times less? People have never really owned this land. A handful of hunters and herders struggled for existence in a vast world belonging to ghosts. In a land where snow lies 7 months a year and winter temperatures dip below minus 60 degrees, the invisible rulers of the taiga did not forgive offenses and could dictate terms. The main mass of the ghostly population of Yakutsk is Ikchai, spirits of nature. Like Japanese kami, they may be personifications of mountains, trees, and lakes, or patrons of an area, embodiments of ideas and phenomena. But if in Japan an old pine tree becomes the embodiment of the idea of a tree, in Yakutsk spirits are not identified with objects. Ikchai just lives in a tree, and if you cut down his house, it will not die. But he gets very angry. Fortunately for loggers, only some trunks are occupied by spirits. But the taiga, the meadows, the swamps, the mountains, the river floods, and the lake expanses are controlled so tightly by the Ikchai, as if Yakutsk were one big sacred grove for them. Even today one can still see trees decorated with ribbons along the roads of the Republic. The spirits collect a small tribute from the people, which can be a souvenir, a coin, or a sip of kumis. They don't take tribute for using the land, but simply for entering the territory. The disembodied, invisible, and unseen Iks manage to survive even the Christianization of Yakutsk without loss. Traditional exorcist means don't work on them. The spirits of the taiga have developed a complete immunity to holy water, crosses, and prayers. But fortunately, the Ikchais are not evil. The most powerful of them, the ruler of the forests and Joker Bai Bayanai, even patronizes hunters. Not all of them, but only the worthy ones who have passed the necessary test and followed the customs. It is true that this god has a peculiar sense of humor, and even the worthy are not always protected from his jokes. The real evil spirits of the Yakutsk are Baz ghosts. They are also incorporeal, but unlike the Ikai, they can appear to people in a variety of invariably frightening guises. Classical abasers prefer the appearance of Irish Fomor-like, one-legged, one-armed, and one-eyed giants. In the last couple of centuries, they are said to have come into vogue in the form of a 3-foot-tall, impenetrably dark, often headless silhouette. If the Abaz appear during the day and they're not afraid of light, you can make out huge black eyes on a dead white face. As a rule, Abaz have no legs, the ghosts simply glide over the ground or gallop along the roads on monstrous steeds. And in any guise, Abasasas emit an intolerable smell of decomposition. It is possible to escape from an Abaz. His main weapon is fear, and if the ghost fails to frighten his victim into flight, he himself becomes confused. Ghosts of this type know how to manipulate gravity, make a weapon or burden incredibly heavy, or even crush a person to the ground. Most dangerous of all, the Abasas are capable of draining their victims' souls. People confronted by evil spirits in the woods or in an abandoned house die without sustaining any external injuries. But the consequences for the victim can be even worse than death. Sometimes an evil spirit enters a devastated body, and it becomes a ghoul. The Siberian dead are so harsh that men are no match for them. They not only bloodthirsty and incredibly strong, it is also fast as lightning. They are hard to stop, for they have never heard of silver, garlic, and holy water, and are as philosophical as zombies should be about bullets and axes. To incapacitate a one, you have to decapitate him at the very least. And to keep a dead man from becoming a one, you have to decapitate him and bury him belly down, with his severed head wedged between his legs. Fortunately, they are short-lived. The presence of the Abaz accelerates the decomposition of the corpse so much that the zombie rots literally before your eyes. The Iwari are even more dangerous than the Yakut ghouls. Buried without the necessary rituals, suicides and criminals come back as a bizarre mixture of vampire and werewolf. During the day, they lives under the water, where they cannot be reached. When he comes out to hunt at night, the ghoul takes on a human form and easily persuades his victims to let him sleep there for the night. When the ghoul attacks, he transforms into a hair-covered monster that is almost impossible to kill. Only when wounded it will retreat. Not all Siberian foul creatures are indifferent to Christian ways. The Siuliukiani, who are like Lovecraft's deep ones, live in the cold lakes of Yakutsk, have embraced orthodoxy. And now, on Christmas Eve, when all the water becomes holy, they have to evacuate to dry land. And since, along with their religion, the Siuliukiani borrowed their vices and way of life from the Russian, the fishmen spend their time on the shore playing cards. In their underwater mansions they leave bags of gold, which a clever diver can try to steal. This pandemonium is ruled by Ulutoyan, the god of death and evil, who lives high up in the icy mountains. In the guise of impenetrable fog, he sometimes descends into the valleys to ravage forests with fierce storms and send pestilence on herds. Ulutoyan devours the hearts of prisoners and turns the souls of men into his tools, instilling them into the bodies of predators. This is how possessed bears appear, ready to attack humans. Chuchunya. Legends about Bigfoot usually describe two species of this creature, the Bigfoot and the Yeti. But in the mountains of Yakutsk and as far south as the Sikhot-Alin, legends of a third, unique species, the Chuchunya. The Chuchunya is distinguished from other relict hominids by its long hair that flutters during running. The slender, of medium height and athletic build, it stands out among other snow people for its civilized appearance. Chuchunya is covered with wool and afraid of fire, but he wears coarse clothing made of hides and hunts using weapons, stones, bone knives, and sometimes bows. And while Bigfoots and Yetis are always silent loners, Chuchunyas usually appear in pairs or threes, talking over each other with a piercing whistle. Pohjola and Rakki. The Kola Peninsula is not only an apatite deposit, but also Pohjola from Finnish mythology, a country ruled by powerful shamans, where cold and disease come to the world. At the same time, though, Pohjola is also the 30th kingdom, a world where magic is as common as the aurora borealis. Somewhere there, in the Midnight Mountains, the world tree that connects the upper and lower dimensions pierces the earth. Climbing up the branches of the tree leads to Savo, an abundant land of the eternal hunt, inhabited by the spirits of virtuous ancestors. It can sometimes be seen reflected in the crystal surface of sacred lakes. From below in the world of the living sneak wizards and blacksmiths like Nenets Sihersha. There are other guests, much more unpleasant, Rakki, Sami ghouls, spirits of evil shamans. As undead, Rakki are incredibly strong, afraid of light and always suffering from hunger. In contrast to European vampires, the Rakki is not limited to blood and devours its victim with bones. Reckoning. The Norwegian sagas mention the Mylings, the undead that turn into infants abandoned in the woods during the famine years. In Chukotka, such demons are called Angiaks. But compared to the Arctic, Norway can be considered a resort. In the icy wilderness it is impossible for an adult exile to survive. Therefore, on the shores of the Arctic Ocean there are also Rekkeni, which has no analogues in warm Scandinavia. The Rekkeni are people expelled from the settlements for greed, malice, or cowardice. After death, the offender is transformed into a dwarf with an extra mouth on his belly. The details of the description depend on the terrain. Black-headed dwarfs lurk under the hills, gray-headed dwarfs in the cliffs, and blue-headed dwarfs in the sea. Sometimes crab claws are mentioned among the signs of Rekkeni. Of course, Rekkeni hates humans. And they invent far more subtle forms of revenge than the Angiakov and Mylings do. They use tiny sledges pulled by invisible dogs the size of ermines to carry sickness and other disasters to their settlements. And there is nothing more terrible for the warlike Chukchi. After all, only those who die in battle can enter the Arctic Valhalla, the Cloud Land. Men who have died in bed are sent to the frozen desert of the lower world. The Bestiary of the Canadian Eskimos. The Inuit Eskimos, whose settlements are scattered from the Chukchi Peninsula to Greenland, are the most numerous people in the Arctic. They were the closest to the pole, surviving in conditions that the Nenets, Evinks, and Chukchi would have found too harsh. But even braver were the Tunisians. This legendary tribe, according to the legends of the Eskimos, in ancient times lived on the shores of the Arctic Ocean, and with the advent of the real people, the Inuit retreated to the lifeless ice deserts. It was 2,000 years ago. Nevertheless, even today, northern hunters encounter tall, incredibly muscular strangers who use crude tools of the Paleolithic era and are dressed in unstitched skins. The primitive language of the Tunyites resembles the babbling of a child. The Tunyites are easily enraged, but on the whole they are peaceful. Far more dangerous is the encounter with the Inupasukajuk giants. They are so powerful that they can kill a bear with a stone throw, but are so simple-minded that they take people for living talking dolls and try to play with them. The giants treasure their toys, so that the hapless hunter cannot escape from captivity for many days. It is difficult to say how dangerous an encounter with a male Inupasukajuk is, for so far no one has survived it or told of their adventures. but the giants have their uses. It's a good fortune if you can tame their dog, then you won't need a kayak. The huge dog can swim in the sea with a hunter on the neck and bring killed narwhals to the shore as a spaniel carries ducks from the lake. True, the happy owner of the mighty beast will have to lead a secluded life. The giant dog will certainly eat the neighbors. To contrast with the giants, there are tiny ishigak, dwarfs that do not reach a man's knee. But they are hard to find, for dwarfs leave no footprints in the snow. Despite their small stature, the ishigak are great bear hunters. They defeat the beast with cunning. First they turn the bear into a lemming, then they kill it, and then they turn it back. Eskimo monsters have one thing in common: they are all dangerous, but not evil. The monsters of the ice world do not wage war against humans. They leave this care to the harsh nature. They only pursue their own goals, which are not always clear. For example, Kalupilluit skinny, scaly watermen who live in the glades often steal children who have played by the cold sea. But they do not eat them, as one might think, but rather protect them from the cold and feed them with witchcraft. Therefore, in hungry years, the Eskimos voluntarily give their babies to the inhabitants of the waters, and then occasionally see their children when they come ashore to play. The Kalupilluit are not indifferent to baby animals either. They fiercely protect the young from hunters. But the watermen are inclined to help people who hunt animals in their proper season. The Takrakaciot are not evil, shadow people who live in a parallel world like the wondrous land of the British Fae. But hearing their voices, much less seeing the Takrakaciot, is not good. It means that the border between the worlds has thinned. One more step and you can leave the familiar reality forever. There is no way back. The shapeshifters, who can take the guise of a raven, a polar fox, a bear, a caribou deer, and a human, are not evil either, but always give themselves away with shining blood-red eyes. They often harm people, but not of their own free will. Istatak do the will of Inuit ancestral spirits. Istatak, a giant, all-seeing flying eye, circles over the tundra, looking for those who break taboos. The ancestors send the shifters to those against whom complained. First with a warning, then with evidence that the warning was worth heeding. Even the mad Maha demon is angry in a peculiar, atypical way. White-haired, blue-skinned, wiry, and nearly naked, armed with imposing claws, he chases his victims through the ice with laughter. And when he catches up, he tickles them with his cold fingers until the unfortunates die with a smile on their faces. Only the Amarok, the giant wolf that devours hunters, foolish enough to go fishing alone, seems like a typical monster. But the descriptions of this beast are so detailed that many consider the Amarok not a mythical creature, but a cryptid, a beast unknown to science but real or recently extinct. It could have been Canis durus, the dreaded wolf, or an even more ancient predator, the common ancestor of the canine and bear species. Tuunbaq. The demonic bear in the novel Terror is Dan Simmons' fiction, but based on real Inuit folklore. The monster's name, Tuunbaq, means evil spirit, and its prototypes can be considered mythical giant bears, the Nanoluk and the 10-legged Kukuvik. The Inuit are also impressed by the common polar bear, which is called Nanak, which means respected. Floors of the world. The mythology of the tribes, whose settlements are separated by hundreds of kilometers of tundra, have only the most general themes in common. Shamans too seldom meet each other to develop a single version of their ancestors' adventures. As a rule, tales of different tribes are united by cosmogony, fundamental ideas about the world order, as well as by the key characters of legends, heroes, and deities. They remain recognizable despite the differences in descriptions of appearance, details of biography, and evaluation of actions. The cosmogony of the most ancient peoples usually states that souls complete a cycle of rebirth without leaving the material world. Later concepts added parallel dimensions: the upper world, inhabited by ancestral spirits, and the lower world, a dark abyss that spawns monsters. The beliefs of the peoples of the Arctic belong to the second category and stand out in only one way. Here in the afterworlds there is no change of seasons. In the upper world, it is always summer, horses and deer are always galloping through the blooming meadows. Only astral doubles of shamans have a way to the happy land. On a sacred sharp mountain in the Linje Delta, where the waters of the great river flow into the icy ocean, stand the guards of the upper world, giants with bare heads, birds with human faces, and copper men. They meet those who are worthy to enter the first of the 9 layers of the heavenly realm beyond the ordinary, visible sky. The Chuchunya also describe the afterlife in a similar way, placing the worthy dead in the cloudland. The Yakutia underworld is located underground and is poorly explored because of the total darkness that reigns there. Much more interesting is the lower world of the Inuit, Adlavan. Here winter reigns, but the gloom of the polar night is softened by the glow of the stars and the unquenchable northern aurora. Not the fiery furnaces, not the sulfur smoke, but the eternal cold and blizzard fills the hell of the northern tribes. The frozen desert is the purgatory through which the Tuunbaq, the souls of the dead, must pass before they can find rest in the silvery light of the moon. In the underworld, she is ruled by Sedna, the lower woman, who is served by werewolf adults with a human face and body, but with wolf legs and ears. From Adlivun she sends her demons, the Tuungates, to earth. Those called Tuungate are the embodiments of frost. The others, like the Chuchunya, bring illness and unsuccessful hunting until they are driven away by shamans. According to the Arctic peoples, every living being and every object is endowed with its own soul, which the Eskimos call Anyanu. At the highest level, the ideas of beings, objects, and phenomena are combined into the Silla, the world soul that gives matter form and meaning. Even the evil Tuungates are an integral part of Silu. The world is one and therefore does not require management. Notions of justice and good do not apply to it. Sedna, the strongest of the evil spirits, ruler of sea animals, and Tekatsertak, the patron of caribou, are hostile to humans, because caribou and walruses have no reason to love hunters. Yet they are revered as food gods. Life and death are parts of cosmic harmony. That's the way it's meant to be.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.